Hello, everyone. This is Scott Wright, the Sports Nerd, on the Sports Nerds Network with my good friend Ron Gallo from Prince George. It's Prince George Island, correct?
No, British Columbia.
British Columbia. I'm sorry. Anyway, let's get back to what I do know. Mr. Gallo is fresh off a 24-hour walkathon for cancer, and he has said his feet are elevated because he has a foot-long blister on his feet. And so he took one for the team in that regard. Good to see you, Ron. I'm glad you can make it to the show tonight. I want to bring up Mr. Olson if he wants to come up, if he's able to. But it's been a while since we had some really hardcore talk about hockey with the playoffs going on. Hey, John, you must see it. John's still in Newfoundland. I can see that. He's in Newfie. But you wanted to let's first of all. Let's bring up your opinion on the playoffs. How do you think they're going so far, and what do you like about the playoffs?
You know what? If this was an alternate universe, I could accept it. But I mean, there's a lot of teams that have been getting through, and right now, when you look at the Final Four, I'm talking the Ottawa Senators, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Out in the West, we're talking the Nashville Predators. Yes, I said the Nashville Predators and the Anaheim Ducks. Really, there is. The Nashville Predators is the surprise team because they had to start by knocking off the Chicago Blackhawks, which they did in fine fashion, 4 straight. Out east, the Ottawa Senators were not expected to have a go with the Boston Bruins. They did. The Pittsburgh Penguins, I mean, it was neat to see them match up with the Washington Capitals and knock off the Washington Capitals yet again in the second round. The Ottawa Senators, as I mentioned, they came through, but they had to come through a very tough path as well. After the Boston Bruins, they had to take out the New York Rangers. The New York Rangers were kind of a favorite team, even though they went in as a wild card. We spoke about this a lot near the end of the regular season. The Metropolitan Division was so stacked, it was not unforeseen that you'd see more teams than just 1 or 2 make it through in the East from that Metropolitan Division. But really the thought was it was going to be Washington and New York in this conference final, but it turns out to be those 2 teams are long gone. The Ottawa Senators, a bit of a surprise, taking on the Pittsburgh Penguins. The interesting thing is the Ottawa Senators were hurt in the late stages of the regular season and fought through it and made it to the postseason. They're starting to get their bodies back into play, and they are, quote unquote, a healthier team here in the postseason. You look at the Pittsburgh Penguins, they seem to have been fighting the injury bug and injuries throughout the entire season. And it starts in the postseason with a complete fluke. The starting goaltender ends up, they claim that he may not have stretched properly, but anyways, he is done. He is still not ready and healthy to be coming back. Since then, there's been a long list of players that have gone down. Sidney Crosby's missed a couple of days. But you look at the list of players that are down for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the interesting thing about Pittsburgh right now, Pittsburgh is a flashy team. They've got lots of offensive skill. Whereas the Ottawa Senators, I'm not going to say have been lulling them into sleep, but they have definitely been frustrating the Pittsburgh Penguins because of their defensive play,
right.
Led by Carl Erickson.
Yeah, and you mentioned Sidney Crosby. What I want to say about Sidney is the fact that what was your take on that whole concussion issue?
Well, it's interesting because I started doing a little bit of research, and the league has done, I won't say a flip-flop, but they've definitely changed how they word the ruling about concussion protocol. You'll remember a few years ago when the concussion protocol became this big thing, and it was the hot topic, and it was the cooler talk and everything else. Everybody's talking about it around the water cooler. The NHL decides that they are going to implement this plan where you go into a quiet room for assessment, and if you're not deemed to be better, you can't go out on the ice. They've kind of changed that wording now, and it's now that if you're not getting worse, you can go play.
Yeah,
now,
and that's not a good thing at all.
No, and I mean, if you think about it, so you've kind of got a baseline, and you kind of feel like this on a scale of 1 to 10. I mean, for a person who does any kind of running or sports activities, it's called RPE, rate of perceived exertion. So if your RPE, is like at a 6, and you diagnose it yourself as at a 6, and you go out and you skate and you don't get worse, but you don't get better, the NHL is now saying, okay, well, if you can do that and you're comfortable with it and it's not making it worse, then play the game. So Sidney Crosby misses he only missed one game. He missed the one game that they won, and then he came back and they lost. And then, of course, they went on to win the series. But the Pittsburgh Penguins, I mean, I would have been really cautious. You and I talked about it on the show last time around, saying that, you know, the game that he missed, they turn around and they win it. Let him rest one more game. What have they got to lose? They're up 3-1, and as it turned out, they ended up losing that game. It goes to 3-2. So if Sidney Crosby's not in that game and it goes to 3-2 the series, bring him back. It's okay. Bring him back. Let's see if they can't win that fourth game with him in the lineup, which they ultimately did. But I don't understand why they would rush him to come back. Since then, there's been Justin Schultz has gone down, Chris Letang has gone down, Patrick Holmquist has gone down. You look at that roster, and they have lost some key players to their roster, and they've had to call up what they call black aces. The black aces are potentially players from the American Hockey League that will not suit up in an NHL game in the postseason, but they're there to kind of fill up the rink during practices. So the Black Aces practice with the regular squad and fill in case the regular squad needs an extra day off to rest or recover. So that's what the use of the Black Aces are. But the Pittsburgh Penguins have called up, if you think of it in war terms, they've called up 2 sets of Black Ace troops. So they brought up the first set. They've had so many injuries that they've had to bring up another second set of Black Aces to be with the squad.
Okay. Now, fast forward to tonight. Pittsburgh's missing Hornquist, Schultz, and Rust with the series going to Ottawa.
Correct. And there's a couple of game time decisions, but I mean, in essence, there's 7 players, if you look at that injured list, that should be, could be, and are going to be missing that game.
Yeah, so that's going to be tough for Pittsburgh to overcome because Ottawa is playing great defensively right now. They're shutting down Pittsburgh. They're not letting them get too close. I thought Pittsburgh played better against Ottawa the other night because just by the way that the whole it was just the way the whole game was flowing. Pittsburgh seemed to be more aggressive. They seemed to have more time in Ottawa's zone. And had more shots on goal than Ottawa did. It just seemed they were catching more breaks. Ottawa just couldn't get it out of the zone to save their life. Now the series is shifting to Ottawa. That could change as well.
Well, and you mean now, okay, here's a double-edged sword, and I'm going to get into the reason why it's double-edged sword. We talk about home ice advantage all of the time. The Ottawa Senators did what they needed to do on the road, and they stole home ice advantage. Home ice advantage means when you break it down, okay, the next 5 games, if you look at it, 3 of them are going to be played in Ottawa.
Right.
So what Ottawa has done is they've stolen away home ice advantage from the Pittsburgh Penguins. Pittsburgh Penguins have to at least split these next 2 games in order to regain home ice advantage. And then it becomes a best of 3, in which case Pittsburgh has 2 of the final 3 games on their home ice. Now let's talk a little bit about home ice. The Ottawa Senators are going back for their first game in the Eastern Conference Final against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Up until this point, and we'll wait and see what the stands look like tonight, but up until this point, the Ottawa Senator fans have been being called out on social media and public media for not attending the games. You think back one round and the Edmonton Oilers were selling out their rink. They were selling out their rink when Edmonton was playing on the road. Okay, so you have an opportunity as an Edmonton Oiler fan to sit at home and watch the game on television. What do you choose to do? Pay a ticket and go sit in the arena and cheer on your team when they're on the road. They were selling out those road games. The Ottawa Senators haven't been selling out the home games during the postseason. So you're supposed to be coming back home to Canadian Tire Place. That's where the Ottawa Senators play. And you're supposed to be expecting to play in front of a loud and boisterous hometown biased team. The Ottawa Senators, if they don't get that sellout, I mean, you got to wonder if the players are not going to feel just a little bit defeated.
Yeah, our buddy John there, he's been very critical of the Ottawa fans. They're fair weather fans. They don't show up to go. They don't show up like the Maple Leaf fans or the Oiler fans. They don't show up for the games, and we have that problem with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. People don't show up for the games. So, I mean, it's very disheartening to a player when you go to the home ice hoping for that home ice advantage and that home atmosphere that you're not going to get it because you can't sell out, and it's very disheartening.
It is. Now, if Ottawa plays the game that we saw them play 2 nights ago, there is no reason why they can't beat the Pittsburgh Penguins, because you look at the ice time that players like Sidney Crosby, Phil Kessel, and Evaly Malkin had. Those 3 players were on the ice every second shift because of the just how deep those injuries go. So if you do not allow a player like Sidney Crosby or Phil Kessel or Malkin to get the ice time that he needs, the space. I'm not talking about actual time in the game. I'm talking about the space on the ice to freewheel, to set up a play, to pass, and get something going for that team. Then, of course, you are going to get frustrated. And we saw that with Phil Kessel actually 2 nights ago. It was like a series of 5 shifts that he was on, and he'd come back, and each time he came back, he had something negative to say. He was staring down at his skate laces. He was calling out players under his breath. But of course, you've got microphones that are on that ice. You've got reporters that are in between the benches, and they can hear all of this stuff. They know what's going on. It turns out that Phil Kessel ends up scoring the only goal in that game, and that was a bit of a fluke. It comes off of a skate right back to his stick, and he's able to pot home the only goal of the game, giving the Pittsburgh Penguins that 1-1 series tie. But you think about Sidney Crosby, and he showed signs of frustration as well, because he'd be open and the puck would never come to him because he's not playing with his regular line mates. Or he would try and feather a puck through, and his line mates were not expecting the pass, and it would go for a non-shot on goal or a non-goal scoring attempt. So the Pittsburgh Penguins have got to sort through these injuries when you're dealing with a very stingy defense like the Ottawa Senators. If these are low-scoring games, which we've seen 2-1 and now 1-0 games, those games go either direction, and they can go like that, and it can be as simple as a deflection off of their own player's skate into their own net. That could turn into be the ugly game-winning goal and what turns this series around. Game 3 is an important game for the home team. I'm going to say it's an important game for the road team, but not as much as it is for the home team. The home team has to establish that what they've done in the 2 previous games and now bringing the series back to their own barn is that they are worthy of that 1-1 series tie, and they are here to extend their lead. So the big game for the home team tonight, the Ottawa Senators, is game number 3. I'm not going to say that Ottawa loses and then can never recover. I see this series actually stretching out a long time, and the longer it goes, the more it favors the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Now, getting back to last night's game, Nashville and Anaheim. Nashville takes the victory, and they're up 2-1 in that series now, because they also stole a game out in Anaheim, game 1, to get that home ice advantage. Yep. I'm liking I've been watching Nashville play, and they play some really good hockey. I'm impressed by the Nashville Predators.
The thing is that if Nashville and Ottawa ever meet in the Stanley Cup Finals, it's either going to be a snooze fest or one of the most exciting Stanley Cup Finals we've ever seen. The reason why I say that is these 2 teams can mirror each other. They use a deep defenseman to set up the play through the neutral zone, and then they use speed to carry it into the offensive end of the ice. Mm-hmm. If you watch the Nashville Predators, they get so many scoring opportunities on the fact that they send 3 players in as fast as possible, and then one just kind of like drops off and goes to the high slot, and he gets a drop back pass. Everybody else is backpedaling, and now all of a sudden they've got to put on the brakes and see what they can do to defend against the shot that's coming. The Nashville Predators are amazing to watch. It's almost a unique style, but you can see it's almost very mirrored to what the Ottawa Senators do with Erik Karlsson on the back end. So you've got Erik Karlsson, who can feather a pass through to Bobby Ryan on a breakaway and send him in for an overtime winner that defeats the Boston Bruins. One other stat that I want to talk about with the Nashville Predators, this is unheard of for a team. I don't care. I'm not a bookie. I don't care who you are, where you were come April the 1st. You did not pick Nashville to make it through to the conference final.
No.
You didn't expect them to get through to Chicago Blackhawks, let alone any deeper. Okay? You look at the Nashville Predators now. They have won 10, count them, 10 consecutive home playoff games.
Right.
They haven't lost on home ice in the postseason. Now, I've jinxed them. They're probably going to lose tomorrow night. But, I mean, you look at that stat and you just question yourself as to how this is possible for a team that nobody put money on.
Well, an NHL Network did a story on the Predators the other night about how passionate and how the atmosphere is like in that building during a hockey game. And it rivals. The only thing I can compare it to is how it rivals to Tampa. And I know how crazy it gets at the May Arena when the Lightning are playing. But they've got. For goodness sake, look who sang the national anthem last night. For goodness sake, Keith Urban's sang the national anthem, and that town is going crazy for these Predators. And the atmosphere in that building is probably one of the main reasons why they are undefeated at home, because the atmosphere is just so amazing, and they don't let the opposing team get any kind of voice in there whatsoever. I like Nashville in this series. I like the way they're playing.
I do too. I mean, all of a sudden, Nashville is no longer the underdog. It's the Anaheim Ducks that have to find an answer to the Predators. You look at the Nashville Predators and you talk about their fan base and you compare them to the Tampa Bay Lightning. I want to do the exact opposite. Compare that fan base to the Ottawa Senators fan base, right?
Yeah,
that's two sides of the coin. And that's what I'm trying to say. There are teams that have found themselves a rallying cry on home soil or home ice,
right,
as the case is. But certainly you look at the Nashville Predators, and those fans, not only are they flocking to the arena, Bridgestone Arena, I believe it's called, but they are supporting them when they're on the road. They have become a very well-educated fan base for the game of hockey. You listen to them, they recognize the too many men, they recognize the offside, they recognize the penalties that are in the gray area that should be called. This fan base knows when to stand and cheer and get behind their team, and they recognize they are almost a seasoned group of hockey fans, not what you would have saw maybe as little as 2 or even 3 years ago in Nashville.
Right, and it's a good thing to see, because anytime you get the fans involved, and if that arena is like the Amalie Arena, there's areas outside where they can set up big screen TVs, and they can watch it on like a concourse type deal. Outside the building during the games as well. I know we did that here in Tampa. There were 2 spots where we could go and watch it on TV. If you couldn't get in the building, you can watch it outside on the concourse. And there's a great big patio type deal out front of the arena that they can sit and watch. And they project the game on a parking garage. It's adjacent to the arena. It's a lot of fun. It really is. All right, before we get running out of time here, you wanted to talk about the expansion draft, which is going to happen at the NHL Awards in Vegas next month.
Yeah. Now, so I think last week, or maybe it was the week before, I kind of ran through the draft lottery and how it all panned out. The New Jersey Devils are going to get to pick first overall. Mm-hmm. So what I can tell you is right now, I've got the first 15 teams. The other 16 teams are all going to be sorted according to how they finished, quote unquote, in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So whoever wins the Stanley Cup is going to choose last.
Okay.
So right now it's the New Jersey Devils and the Philadelphia Flyers, which, by the way, neither one of those two teams should have been that high in the draft. Then you get the Dallas Stars, the Colorado Avalanche, the Vancouver Canucks, and then the Vegas Golden Knights slip in with their first draft pick at pick number 6. This will be a couple of days after they have already announced their expansion draft. And I do have some of the rules. I've committed it to memory, so it might be a little bit gray. I couldn't find that one article I wanted to pull up, but we'll go through that in a second. The Arizona Coyotes, Buffalo Sabres pick 8. The Detroit Red Wings, which was the first time in 26 years, they had gone on a 25 consecutive year playoff berth. For the first time ever, the Detroit Red Wings don't make it. They picked 9th. The Florida Panthers will pick 10th, the Los Angeles Kings 11th, Carolina Hurricanes, Winnipeg Jets, your Tampa Bay Lightning come in at 14th, and then the New York Islanders will be 15th. And then again, like I said, the other 16 teams will pick according to their position following the Stanley Cup. Now, what ends up happening, Vegas Golden Knights have to choose one player from every team. There will be 2 levels of protection, and it's a deeper level of protection as well. So I'm going to start with the deeper level. A player like Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid are automatically protected by the NHL. So they can't be chosen in the expansion draft by the Vegas Golden Knights. So they don't need to be protected by their own team, which is almost a gift.
Right.
Right. Because now the reason why I say that is because the teams, every NHL team can protect either a configuration of 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goaltender, or any combination of 8 skaters and 1 goaltender. So in one protection level, you can protect 11 players. In the other protection level, if you've got, for example, let's say that you've got really deep defensive core. So if you could only protect 3 and you don't want to lose your 4th defenseman, you now have to you can protect 4 defensemen and 4 forwards. So you're going to end up losing somebody from your depth up front as opposed to your depth on the blue line. Only 1 goaltender can be protected. So some people are thinking that the reason why Marc-Andre Fleury was never traded at the trade deadline was not because of a crystal ball that saw Matt Murray getting hurt heading into the postseason, but rather that it became trade bait, if you will, or draft bait for the Vegas Golden Knights to leave the rest of their team alone and take Marc-Andre Fleury as their goaltender.
Right. Gotcha.
So there are some teams that are going to be severely impacted by the draft, and they're going to have to figure out how to kind of protect their key assets. There's other teams that simply because of a couple of rules are going to end up sitting pretty fancy and not really losing much of anything. I talked about less than 2 years in the NHL, 2 years or less, and you're protected automatically by the league. There is one other thing that the teams have to protect a player that has a no-move clause. If the player has a contract that states there is a no-movement clause, an NMC, then he has to be on that protected list. So it's the exact opposite of being a freebie. It's the exact opposite. It actually hurts those teams. So if they have too many of those players that have no movement clauses, you end up having to waste one of your protected list on them. So now the Vegas Golden Knights have to go through the league and they have to pick 14 forwards. I want to say 7 defensemen. For some reason, I think that's wrong. I think it's 8, and they have to pick 3 goaltenders from the other teams. So it's 14 and 7 is 14 and 7 is 21, and 3 makes 24. That's not quite right. There's something wrong there in that math. But I know it's 14 forwards and it's 7 or 8 defensemen and then 3 goaltenders. And then you can still have a couple of extras to kind of like fill in a couple of other holes. But it will be interesting. The Vegas Golden Knights, by the way, have to submit their list on June 20th, and it will not be announced until June 21st.
All right. And
the reason why is because on the 20th, when the Vegas Golden Knights submit their list, the NHL needs to go through and make sure that there's no players on there that don't qualify. Right. Teams have to, like, players have to be under contract. There's a couple of little nuances with everything, right? But it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out and who's going to go from which team and how the teams are going to protect different players. But certainly, I don't see the Edmonton Oilers and the Toronto Maple Leafs getting stung by the expansion draft. Other teams with their no movement clauses and whatnot, they could end up getting hurt. Don't be surprised to see Joe Thornton become a Vegas Golden Knight is one of my predictions.
Okay.
Marc-Andre Fleury is a prediction of mine to end up in a Golden Knights jersey as their goaltender. Yeah, I mean, it's starting to shape up. It's not that far away. It's only about a month.
Right. No, that's right after the finals are over with, in case, if the finals go a full 7 games. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, if the finals go a full 7 games, it'll still be over by the middle of June, like right. June 16th or 17th. And the expansion draft, and they're saying that it'll be a bit of a media circus from the 18th till the 20th, but the 21st is when the actual expansion will be announced. The last expansion draft, by the way, was back in 1970.
1970. That's the last time there was an expansion draft. How did the Lightning get players when they came into the league?
Tampa Bay, if I'm not mistaken, I might be missing a year.
Because the Lightning wasn't a team that moved. They were a brand new franchise.
67 was an expansion. 70 was an expansion. No, I'm pretty sure. Let me just check something here. Going to check something here before we go real quick. I'm just going to check on all of them. And the Tampa Bay, if I'm not mistaken, they were not allowed to have an expansion draft for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
There was an expansion draft in 2000 for the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Minnesota Wild.
There we go. That's the one I missed. That was held in Calgary, Alberta.
There wasn't. Oh my gosh! If I'm looking at this right, this is on Wikipedia. Lightning came into the league, I believe, in '92 or '93. Hang on a second.
2004. Yeah.
Yeah. 10 so years there was an expansion draft in 1992 for Ottawa and Tampa. It was held on June 18th.
They don't list it here. All right. Nope, my bad.
Yeah, there's been a lot. There's actually I'm looking at Wikipedia, and there's been an expansion draft in 67, 70, 72, 74, 79, 91, 92, 93, 98, 99, 2000, and then 2017. So there's been several. Not to step on the guru's toes, mind you. I'm just looking at what I'm seeing.
No, please don't. The feet are still sore.
So, but yeah, I kind of figured. That's when Ottawa and Tampa both came into the league, was in 92, 93. So
interesting. I'm just looking through another guru's list. And I'm trying to find who he's giving up as goaltenders. Malcolm Subban is one goaltender's name that comes out. Craig Smith. And I'm not seeing the third goaltender in here. Martin Marincin would be lost by the Toronto Maple Leafs. I don't think Martin Marincin can be lost. I'm pretty sure he's still underneath that rookie list. If not, he just passed it. And the Edmonton Oilers, who are they thinking that the Edmonton Oilers are going to take from them? Edmonton Oilers, Benoit Pouliot. Again, like I said, not a huge name coming out of Edmonton. So what you saw Edmonton do here in the last part of the regular season and through the postseason, expect to see the Edmonton Oilers be a lot stronger team again next year.
Mm-hmm. All right, Ron, we're at 7:30. It's time to move on here. I really appreciate it. I hope you feel better. Get some.
Every day I feel better.
You're working with it. Are you taking prolonged sit breaks while you're at work, or did work give you the week off after the run?
No, Monday I kind of tried to take it easy, and then Tuesday I tried to pretend that was back to normal, and it didn't quite work out. Got a little bit swollen foot, so I had to come home and rest it for sure. But no, like today's a day off, so I've been up and down, walking and doing a couple of different things. The foot's starting to feel a lot better.
All right, Ron. Well, you enjoy the rest of your week. All right, Ron. And we'll see you next week, and we'll have we may actually have a Stanley Cup final in place by this time next week. Who knows? So anyway, enjoy the week.
Yeah.
Sell some cars, and thanks again. Take care.
Yeah, you betcha. One last real quick thing, and this is Rick Laughlin. Patrick Kane gave up his seat on a United Airlines flight for a service person.
Nice.
Just speaks to some character, right?
Absolutely.
All righty. You guys have a good rest of the hour, and we'll talk to you guys after the weekend. It's a long weekend in Canada, by the way.
It's a long weekend for us next weekend. Next week is a long weekend for our weekend.
I know.
Yeah. So
they never line up, Canadians and the Americans. They just can't get on the same page.
I know, right? All right, Ron. Take care.
All right. We'll see you.
All right. Later. Thanks.
All right. Bye now.
Now we're going to bring up our resident football guru, so to speak, Mr. Derek Laughlin, who is sitting in a comfy chair in Chicago, Illinois, with the only Chicago team he follows is the Blackhawks. Well, you don't follow the Cubs either. You follow the White Sox, don't you?
No, I'm originally from Wisconsin, so I guess if the Brewers ever put a team out there, I'd root for them. But seeing they don't, I enjoyed the Cubs winning.
Okay. Anyway, Derek, how you doing, buddy?
Good. How you doing?
Doing very well, very well. Before we get going on what we had planned, I have 3 stories I want to get to,
okay,
and I want your take on them. One of which has fantasy implications, the other 2 not so much. Okay. Let's go ahead and get the Browns out of the way right away. And Jacek McCurry, is that right? McCourty was signed by the Browns to a 2-year, $6 million deal. That will show up their secondary. That's a good pickup by the Browns. I think he was with the Titans last year, if I'm not mistaken. But what do you think about that pickup? Was that a smart signing, you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think he's on the back end of his career at this point. But when you have a team that is coming off a 1-15 season, sometimes it's good to have some veteran leadership, and that's a guy that can mentor some younger guys, and he can play a role on that team and give them positive snaps. It's not a bad contract at 2 years for $6 million. So all in all, I like the signing.
Yep, I do too. I really do too. I like it, and I'm of the same opinion you were. I think he's going to be a big leader and help these young kids just coming in grow and learn and get better. The second is a little oddball. Giselle came out today or yesterday and said Brady suffered a concussion in 2016.
That never showed up on the injury report.
Well, not only that, but the NFL have no records that he suffered any head injuries whatsoever the entire season.
Well, I mean, she's not a doctor.
Right.
So I mean, I read Pro Football Talk that it sounded more like a concerned wife of a player. I mean, there's a difference between having a headache after a game and having a concussion.
Right.
And if, depending on what the doctors diagnose it with, that's going to make the difference. But I think you're also kidding yourself if you don't think that if a guy's got a mild concussion and he's the star quarterback of the team, that the team might try to hide that more than the third string tight end. Yeah,
I agree too. And like she says, he can't throw and catch the ball all by himself.
Right.
Oh God!
I mean, I had read that story, and I saw that unless there's something significantly there where there was a cover-up of the injury, the Patriots aren't likely going to get fined or dock draft picks just for that alone.
You never know. Roger Goodell might start digging again to see what he can get on the Patriots.
Well, remember Favre that one year he went to the Vikings. He talked about how his shoulder was bad the entire year, and the Jets didn't knew about it the whole season. And it was never on the injury report, and they got fined for that. Yeah. They had a significant fine. So sometimes loose lips can sink ships, so to speak.
Yep. And lastly, the Philadelphia Eagles made some noise today. They signed LeGarrette Blount to a 1-year deal for $2.8 million. That has fantasy implications in the red zone, in my opinion.
Definitely. I mean, Garrett is 30 years old at this point, and it's a committee of backs with Darren Sproles, Wendell Smallwood, Ryan Matthews, although I don't think Ryan Matthews is going to be there for long after this signing. But none of those guys are really big backs around the goal line. So at the very minimum, he's going to card about a goal line and short yardage role. This is a guy that had almost 300 carries last year and 18 rushing touchdowns. So if he comes out and plays effective, I don't think those other guys are so solid that he couldn't win a starting job there and earn 250 to 300 carries.
Yeah, I mean that's could be a dark horse signing for the Eagles, because I mean they're not running that spread offense like they did under Chip Kelly. They're running a more standard offense with the way they're going now. So that might work out to Blount's betterment as well, because he's not the skill set back that you want in a spread offense, because he clearly can't catch the ball out of the backfield. He's more right in your face, right there, running north south, breaking tackles on the inside and getting some short yardage situations as well as the goal line. So that could work out for Philadelphia's betterment as well. As much as I hate the Eagles, I think they did a really good job with that one.
Well, and again, it isn't like they gave him a 5-year contract for $25 million.
It was a 1-year contract. So
1-year deal. And taking a flyer on a guy, and if he doesn't work out, you cut him and move on with your life with very minimal salary cap.
Right, and the most he's going to hit you is $2.8 million. That's the max he can get on that deal. So it was a good signing. All right, what else you got? Anything else you want to bring up that I didn't bring up?
Well, Brett brings up a good one. Could we see Colin Kaepernick in Seattle?
I saw that too.
I think that makes a lot of sense for two reasons. Number one, Russell Wilson's a mobile quarterback, and Kaepernick is a mobile quarterback. Now, Russell Wilson can do everything that Kaepernick can do infinitely better than Kaepernick can, but they really wouldn't have to change the offense if Russell Wilson went down. They could run a very similar offense. And the second reason I like it has nothing really to do with sports. I think if you look at Kaepernick and who he is, people that tend to be on the blue side of the political spectrum tend to have a positive favorability of him, and people that are on the right side of the political spectrum tend to have a negative view of him. Seattle's one of the bluer cities in the country, and so I mean, I don't think that him going to Atlanta or Tennessee or someplace in the South that tends to be more red makes a lot of sense, because you could really have some backlash from the fan base there. So I think you got two things in play there. Can run the offense, which is the most important, but probably not going to have as negative of an impact with the fan bases other places.
Yeah, I agree too. And Houston would also be a bad fit for him in that regards as well, because of the atmosphere in that town. And Brett does also bring up, they said they're also looking at RG3. Again, RG3 is a mobile quarterback, but I think Kaepernick's a better fit. I think Kaepernick's a more mature selection to go there and be more willing to watch and learn under Russell Wilson, and be his backup, so Wilson can teach him the offense. And Kaepernick's not dumb; he can pick up on that offense pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah, RG3. Nobody should be looking at RG3. No. I think his best days are way behind him at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't do very well. He took the field in Cleveland last year and got hurt the first series he was on the field. So, and that's just just the way it is for him. That's going to be the story of his NFL career, is how often injured he was and how ineffective he was after his rookie season. So, all right, well, we left off last week with our NFL draft impact with just 2 divisions left to go. And obviously, Elliot's not here. Elliot is still dealing with some health issues. He's not
I'm sorry to hear that.
So he will not be able to come to the show. But we left off with just 2 divisions to go, the NFC West and the AFC West, and the impact the draft had on that team, specifically the first 3 rounds.
Yeah. So which division were we going to start with?
Let's start with the AFC West, and then we'll go NFC.
Okay. So that would be Denver, I think.
Yeah.
So in the first round, they took Utah offensive tackle Garrett Bowles, and that I thought was a very good pick. He was one of the faster linemen, more athletic linemen. Very low for the first lineman in a draft to go, the lowest I could find since the merger. But that doesn't mean he can't turn into a good player. And like Mike Mayock says, good football IQ, should develop, play left tackle, big upgrade for their line.
Yep. I've lost the link. Hang on a second.
You want me to get it for you in the chat room?
If you've got it, yeah, go ahead, because I can't find it again. There it is.
And then the second round, they took Florida defensive end DeMarcus Walker. And I think it's important that I know offense has been their problem the last couple of years and that their defense has been one of the best in the league. But it is starting to become a veteran defense. DeMarcus Ware retired in the offseason. Talib and Ward are on the wrong side of 30. So they need to bring some new blood in there to play around Von Miller. And this is a guy that addresses a need in the front 7.
Right, and then they would take wide receiver Carlos Henderson out of Louisiana Tech. He's 5'11", 199. He's like that Demaryius Thomas type, I would think. Look at from what I can first see, he's not big, but he's fast and can catch. So
yeah, he's more like Emmanuel Sanders. Thomas is 6'3" or 6'4".
Okay.
Carlos Henderson's a little shorter, but yeah, he's played at Louisiana Tech, which is not one of the major schools in the country, but it was a guy that a lot of people thought was going to go in the top 3 rounds, and is a guy that could contribute as a slot receiver.
And then finally in the third round, they took Brendan Langley out of Lamar, a cornerback, 6 feet 201. Like I said, with the Talib being on the wrong side of 30 and that secondary get a little old, it doesn't hurt to bring in some young talent to try and shore up that secondary.
No, better to keep addressing a few picks at a time and integrate them into a good defense rather than wait until everybody's old and then try to replace it in one draft. That's not a good way to go. A couple other picks in this draft class I think are worth mentioning. Jake Butt, very good tight end. He had an ACL surgery, but they are thinking that he could be ready this year. So that's a guy that probably would have gone in the late first, early second round if he hadn't torn his ACL. And Chad Kelly, the nephew of Hall of Famer Jim Kelly, he probably would have gone in the second or third round if he didn't have a ton of character issues and a ton of health concerns. But he was Mr. Irrelevant in this draft. And with Denver having no surefire quarterback on the roster, this is a guy that in a year or two, if he can kind of get his health right and his mind right where he's not making bad decisions, he's got an NFL arm.
I watched him at Ole Miss. I've seen him play several times when he was with Ole Miss, and he looks really good when he's on. If he's playing, if he's healthy and he's got his head on straight, he's got a really good. He's got a lot of good talent, and he could turn out to be a diamond in the rough for Denver if he can get his, excuse the French, shit together and stay healthy. I agree. I mean, he could be the quarterback of the future almost, but I mean, he's got a long way to go before that happens.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I've actually talked about Chad Kelly a couple times on this show as well as on my Sunday show, how impressed I was in. But it's just too bad he had some off the field issues and the injury issues this past season, and that just kind of his draft stock just took a nosedive.
Yep. All right, as far as a grade goes, I'd probably give it a 7.5. I love the Bulls pick. Wasn't in love with the Walker and Henderson pick. I think if I was going to give it a higher grade, I'd have to like those better. But I thought they got a couple sleepers in round 5 and round 7. And if those guys turn out, it has the potential to be a very good draft class.
Yep. Next up, we got Kansas City. And this was after the Chicago issue. This was the pick. This was the surprise of the first round. It took Patrick Mahomes out of Texas Tech, a gimmicky offense in college. He doesn't know how. He wasn't taught how to read defenses. But then again, he's being taught by Andy Reid, which is not a bad thing to be part of.
No, and I think Brett Favre had a comment that Patrick Mahomes couldn't have a better coach to teach him how to play quarterback. And I don't know, is Reid a quarterback guru? He developed Donovan McNabb, who had a lot of success there. Not so good with Kevin Cobb, but Jim Harbaugh turned Alex Smith's career around, and I think Andy Reid's been able to build on that. So yep. I think he is good at coaching quarterbacks. But yeah, Mahomes has a lot to learn. He's played a lot under shotgun. He's going to have to learn more center. He can throw the ball deep, but he needs to be smart about when he does. There's some turnover concerns there, and it's a big pick. It's a big gamble because not only did they use a first-round pick on him, but they traded next year's first-round pick for him.
With the Bills.
They need him to work out.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big kid. He's 6'2", 225, so he's got the build for it. It's just a matter if he can learn and become accustomed to an offensive playbook, which he's already come out and said, "Oh my God, this is difficult to learn." So he's already a little overwhelmed with Andy Reid's offense. So again, he's not expected to hit the field next year. Alex Smith is going to be there for another 2 years, I would think. So he's got some breathing room as far as growing pains are concerned. Again, it's a gamble, and if it pays off, Andy Reid's a genius. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep. And then they took, I don't know, I'll let you say that name for the second round. How do you say that?
No, I'm not going to try and say that. No, you're the lawyer. You got the language, the education. I don't.
Tano Kapaskin. How's that sound?
It works for me.
he was a guy that they compared to Hercules on NFL.com. Just said he's sculpted like a Greek god. But he played at Villanova. He's 6'7", 289. All the physical talents, but a really, really raw piece. But he fits into what they like to do there, and he could develop into something special down the road if he applies his mind to playing football. And then the 22nd pick overall in round 3. Actually, the 22nd pick in round 3, 86th overall. Kareem Hunt out of Toledo, running back, 5'10", 216. Not a big kid. I don't know what they're thinking here with this. Granted, they let their running back go. Jamal Charles, thank you. And that's because of his injury issues. But who knows? I mean, he's not going to be the guy to replace Lamar Charles, though. No, I think what the issue was, though, is Spencer Ware had some durability concerns last year with concussions and things like that. So I think they know they're going to need to run the ball because Alex Smith doesn't put up prolific numbers. Mahomes, if he plays this year, is not going to put up prolific numbers. Right. So they need a running game to lean on. And if something were to happen to Spencer Ware, this gives them a guy that they could potentially lean on. Yep. All right, and then that's the first few rounds. Anything else strike you about KC's draft? They got a big receiver in Chesson out of Michigan in the 4th round. He's 6'3", 204. Tyreek Hill's a little on the small side. That could be a guy to watch in fantasy, except that the Chiefs probably don't pass the ball enough that you're going to want to have Kelsey, Hill, Macklin, and then the receiver after those guys. So, but that's somebody to keep an eye on. Okay. All right, next up we have – well, my grade, I'd probably give this a 7.0. The whole thing hinges on Mahomes. If he works out, you're happy. You got your franchise quarterback. You could be set for the next decade. But I thought they had to give up a first-round pick to get him. I liked Kareem Hunt. I liked the end out of Villanova. But I thought giving up a first-round pick for a guy that is not anything but slam dunk was a very, very risky move. Yeah, I agree. I'm not sold on Mahomes and won't be until I see him hit the field. All right, moving on, we got Kansas City. I'm sorry. The Kansas City. We just did Kansas City. The new Los Angeles Chargers
not the San Diego Chargers, but the Los Angeles Chargers. And with the first round pick, Mike Williams out of Clemson, big kid, superstar at Clemson. I mean, they need a good receiver for good God,
for Phillip Rivers.
Good Lord. Oh, it's dementia setting in. I think that's what it is. But yeah, we got a big receiver, a big time receiver, because their receiving core was decimated last year. They still have a good strong tight end core, but this kid is gonna make an impact right away, I think, out of the box.
Yeah, well, if Keenan Allen can stay healthy, you're going to line him, Tyrell Williams, and Mike Williams out up there. You can put Hunter Henry out there. You can put Antonio Gates. You can put Melvin Gordon out there, and then you got Phillip Rivers. This suddenly is a team that is just loaded at all the skill position players. Now, I thought they did need help some defense, and there was some pretty good defensive players they passed up. And Williams was the best receiver on the board at that point. Fits what they like. But if he works out, I mean, this could be a lights out offense.
Well, yeah, this is where they took the top 10 picks. You had 6 offensive players, 3 quarterbacks and 3 receivers taken in the top 10 picks, which we didn't think was going to happen before the draft. So this was just in that wave of receivers that went at that time in that span. But it's a great pick for San Diego because they need the receiving help. I mean, the question is, can they protect Phillip Rivers, and can they drive for Gordon to get some space to run the ball too? Yeah. So that's and their defense is always a big question, like you said. I mean, looking at the draft, they took 3 defensive players in the entire draft, 2 safeties and a defensive tackle. So they didn't do a lot to shore up that defense. So it's a matter to see what's going to happen. Although, they had a great first round pick last year for that defensive line. So you never know what's going to happen with that. So moving on to the second round, they took Forrest Lamp, an offensive guard out of Western Kentucky, to try and shore up that offensive line so Rivers gets some protection. They also took Dan Feeney in the third round, also an offensive guard, to shore up that line as well from Indiana.
Yeah, I think Pro Football Focus had the Chargers ranked as the 31st ranked offensive line last year, and they really needed help on the interior. And Forrest Lamp, I thought, was one of the best players in this draft. Was hoping that Green Bay could get him to replace T.J. Lang, but they went secondary there. I think San Diego got an absolute steal with that guy. That could be a guy that's a perennial Pro Bowler for a decade.
Mm-hmm. They took an offensive tackle in the 6th round as well to try to even get more help. So they took three offensive linemen in this draft. They obviously know that they need offensive line help. Why Indianapolis didn't do this, who knows? But I mean, there wasn't a great offensive lineman draft like we talked about before. But at least San Diego tried to do something to help out that offensive line and protect Rivers, who's 35, 36 at this point.
He's not 36. He's probably about 34, 35.
Okay.
He's getting up there. I mean, he's on the back end of his career.
Right. So, and he needs to stay on his feet, not on his back. So what kind of grade are you going to give them for this draft?
I'm looking. Rivers was 35 last year, actually. So yeah, he is going to be 36, I think, at the end of the year. My grade for them, I'd probably give it about an 8. Mike Williams, I mean, he fits a need, but he's a guy that I just didn't think played physical enough in college for his size and had some durability issues. I loved the guard picks. I thought that was the best part of their draft. And if those guys pan out, that's going to really help Melvin Gordon in fantasy. So I think it's a good draft. If Mike Williams pans out, I think it has the potential to be a great draft. Those offensive linemen, I think, were pretty safe picks. Yeah,
I agree. Next up, we've got the Oakland Raiders, who should have been playing New England in the AFC Championship game if not for the injury to Derek Carr.
Right.
They went defense in the first 3 rounds. First pick, they took Garin Conley out of Ohio State, cornerback, 6'0", 195. Buckeyes.
Well, he could have been a top 15 pick probably, but he had a rape allegation right on the eve of the draft. Yep. Sounds like the Raiders gave him a lie detector test to see if they thought his story would hold true. And like I said, there's a reason those aren't admissible in court. But
so says the attorney.
as the attorney. But I mean, it seems like that story has not really stuck around, and that unless something else comes out with it, I mean, he should be fine. So they got a very good talent, 6-foot corner that probably could have been a top 15 pick.
Agreed. Second round, they went Obi Malafanu, I guess, out of UConn. 6'4", 224 safety. Sounds like he's a big hitter.
Yeah, this guy was second in the ACC in tackles, so I think he's a guy you can line up at safety or at corner. 44-inch vertical. I think he had like a 4.5 40. I mean, so he's got some good speed. They just got a freakish athlete, and I think he translates very well to the NFL game. Yeah. I think the key to the secondary is having guys that can play multiple places and that you can create mismatches that are going to be harmful to the quarterback.
Yeah, Mayock thinks he's a genetic freak, just like you said. He thinks he's a genetic freak. So that's going to be good for Oakland. And you know what? Their defense needs help because they gave up a lot of points last year as well. So that can help them. Third round, they went Eddie Vanderdoes out of UCLA, defensive tackle, 6'3", 305. Again, they need that pressure on the quarterback because they weren't getting a lot of pressure on the quarterbacks last year. And they need something to shore that up and even shore up the middle for run help. So defense was definitely the need for this team because they got one of the best offensive lines in the league. They got one of the best quarterbacks. They got a great receiving core. So they actually did pretty well as far as getting defense in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah, I think they did very well to shore up things. And then if you're looking for a fantasy relevant player that they took later after the 3rd round, a name to watch is Elijah Hood. He's 5'11", 232, big physical back. And there is talk that if Marshawn Lynch were to go down with an injury, Elijah Hood would be the running back that would take over the early down and goal line work. And then they would use DeAndre Washington and Jalen Richard as the change of pace. So, and I think it's very likely that Lynch could get hurt given his age and the amount of carries. So Elijah Hood is somebody to watch in fantasy.
Plus, he's on the wrong side of 30, right?
Wrong side of 30, wrong side of 2,000 carries. Out of the league for a year.
You sense a pattern here, Derek.
I am consistent. So.
All right, and what kind of grade are you going to give Oakland?
I'll give them an 8.5. I really think that they needed to get defense in this draft, and they found it. I love the running back value late in the draft, and some of these other players, any of them work out, it has the potential to be another good draft for them. So I think they did what they needed to do.
Good deal. All right, that's the AFC West. Now we're going to move on to the NFC West, and we are going to start with – where is it? The Los Angeles Rams is the first team up as far as I can tell in the NFC West.
What about Arizona?
There we go. That's what I missed. I knew I missed something. Arizona. Sorry. We'll start with Arizona. The Arizona Cardinals. They had needs. I mean, you think they need a quarterback, which I think they do too. But
that's the one mistake. I mean, before we get to the individual players, the one mistake I thought that they made in this draft is if they would have just taken in the 4th round Peterman out of Pittsburgh, you'd have a guy that was NFL ready, run a pro-style offense. I think he'd even been around in round 5 at either the 157th or 179th pick. So I don't understand why they didn't take a quarter, because if Carson Palmer goes down, they have nothing behind him. He wasn't that good last year until about the last month of the season. I think that's a big gamble not to come away with a quarterback in this draft.
Yeah, I do too. I really do too. Especially with Carson's injury issues in the past. He's injury prone.
Yeah.
He's
38.
He was a great quarterback, with the Bengals. He was good in Oakland. He wasn't great, but he's had a really good career in Arizona. But again, he is 38 years old, and he's not Tom Brady who can play till he's 70, like he says. But we'll see. All right. So in the first round, they took Hassan Reddick, linebacker out of Temple. For a team that, that has one of the better defenses in the league, I mean, granted, they got some older players and they're losing players, but I mean, to go defense in that first pick, do you think that was smart?
Yeah, I think so, because with all that madness that happened at wide receiver and quarterback, there were a ton of really good defensive players on the board, and this guy might be one of the most athletic linebackers in the draft. 6'1", 237, can provide pass rush from the inside linebacker spot. I think they helped their defense out. That was good value.
And I'm looking at Mayock's statement. He says he went from a preferred walk-on at Temple that was asked to leave to the 13th pick in the draft. That's a pretty good story for that kid too.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Second round, they went Budda Baker.
Budda Baker
out of Washington.
Very versatile defensive back. He can probably play the slot corner. He can play safety. The Honey Badger has had problems staying healthy there in recent years. This might give them a new Honey Badger if Honey Badger can't stay healthy.
What was his combine numbers? Do you know?
All those Washington guys did really well. Off the top of my head, I thought he ran let me look. That'll be really easy to find out. 4.45 40, 15 bench reps, 32.5-inch vertical, did real well in the 3-cone at 6.76 seconds.
Okay.
He's a good athlete. I saw some mocks that had him going in the first round. He only missed it by 5 picks. I mean, he's a good talent.
One of the guys that we talked about had great, because this draft also was full of people, guys with great names. Budda Baker is just a great name.
It definitely is. Definitely.
All right. And third round, they went with Chad Williams, wide receiver out of Grambling State, 6'1", 204.
Yeah, and then that's about where I have seen him being mocked, and he might have even gone higher if he hadn't had some off the field issues, according to Mike Mayock. I've seen some reports that say he might be the guy that succeeds Larry Fitzgerald there. That's a pretty tall order. Larry Fitzgerald was first round pick, top of the draft talent. That was one of the easiest slam dunk picks coming out of college that you've ever seen. So
he's starting his 13th season this year too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and nobody's going to succeed Larry Fitzgerald. That's an all-time great. But Chad Williams has a chance to learn behind one of the best and develop into something special possibly down the road.
Yep. Okay. And anything else stick out with the Cardinals and those other 4 picks you see there?
Yeah, TJ Logan's kind of an interesting pick in the 5th round because David Johnson can do it all, but I've heard talk that they want to give him 30 carries a game. That's ridiculous. That's way too – 30 touches a game is way too many. He should be around the 20 to 23 mark like he was last year. Logan's a 5'9", 196-pound back that can kind of be a change of pace, third down special teams guy. What's the guy's name? Ellington has never been able to stay healthy. So I like this pick. I think that's a guy that could develop into a nice change of pace back.
All right. What kind of grade are you going to give the Cardinals?
I'll give them an 8.0. I think Reddick and Baker could contribute this year. They've got some offensive line depth and a few players that could develop down the road. So it has the potential to be a good draft. All right.
And then we move on to the Los Angeles Rams, who are back to the white and blue this season. They're getting rid of that nasty-ass gold they've had for so many years. They're going retro and going back to their 70s blue and white. And they took Gerald Everett, tight end out of South Alabama.
Well, they lost Lance Kendrick in free agency to Green Bay, so they needed to find a tight end, and you got to give Jared Goff some targets. And this is a guy that was very athletic in the combine and predicted to go in the top round 2, round 3, somewhere in there. So they filled the need and got a player that might contribute right away.
Yeah, they didn't have a pick until the second round because they gave up their first round picks for this year. So, but they end up with a decent tight end to help out Jared Goff. You think Jared Goff is the quarterback day 1 for second season?
I think he has to be. I mean, there's nobody else they have on the roster that screams he should be playing. So I think you find out what you have with Goff, and if he doesn't do well this year, then you might have to look in a quarterback deep draft next year. Yep.
All right. Third round, they went Cooper Kupp out of Eastern Washington, wide receiver, 6'2", 204, big kid.
He fell a little bit because he had a 4.62 40-yard dash and a 31-inch at the vertical. He played at Eastern Washington, so a lot of people don't think he can play against elite competition. But Mayock points out against 2 Pac-12 teams, he caught the ball 27 times with 6 touchdowns. So don't give the level of competition with Kupp. So who knows? If Goff is going to improve this year, he's going to need some weapons to help him out, and this is a bigger target that could help him in the red zone.
Yep. And they took John Johnson, safety out of Boston College, in the third round.
Yeah, they need lots of defensive help. They need offensive help. It's a team that was among the worst in the league last year. They'd have been drafting 5th if they hadn't traded their pick to Tennessee. So this gives them a guy that can give them some depth in the secondary, maybe develop into a starter down the road.
I thought they had a better defense than what they showed last year, though. That defense should have been better than what they showed.
Yeah, but when your offense gives you absolutely nothing, and when your offense is turnover prone and it's never on the field, defenses wear down. I mean, I love Aaron Donald. I mean, that guy is the best defensive tackle in the league and an MVP candidate. But I don't care what defense you are, you can't be on the field as much as they were with the offense giving you no field position.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest things that how you can't have your defense live up to its potential when they're always gassed and out of breath because their offense can't stay on the field.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else stand out in this with the Rams?
Not really. As far as a grade, I'd probably give it a 6.5. I didn't really think they added a ton of impact players. I don't think Kupp is going to become a special receiver at the NFL level. Everett could develop. I mean, he's out of South Alabama. Time will tell. But I think if you look at, they were really handicapped by not having that first-round pick, and it shows with what they were able to add to a roster that needed a lot more than what they got.
Yeah. Okay. Next, our favorite team out west to make fun of, the San Francisco 49ers. They went Solomon Thomas with their 3rd pick overall, defensive end out of Stanford. I liked that pick for them. They need help on that defensive line.
Yeah, they were 32nd in points allowed and yards allowed. Part of that had to do with the Chip Kelly offense that had them on the field all the time. But part of it is they didn't have a lot of good players. So I love this pick because not only did they get Solomon Thomas, but they got the Bears' 3rd round, 4th round, and 3rd round pick next year in the Mitch Trubisky trade. So when you look at a player, they got somebody they can build the defense around, and they got a slew of other picks besides. I thought Lynch hit it out of the park in his first draft pick.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did too. He surprised everybody. I think he was playing possum. I think he was playing poker with Chicago in that regards. I don't know that they had all these phone calls that he's saying that he had. I think he just pulled a bluff and Chicago fell for it. And first pick in this, actually the 31st pick in the first round, they went Reuben Foster, linebacker out of Alabama, 6'0", 229. That was a controversial pick because of what was going on with Foster, though.
I don't think it was too controversial with where they got him. I saw mocks that had him going at 9 to Cincinnati, but because of character issues, getting kicked out of the combine, there was concerns about his shoulder. All those things caused him to fall. But at the end of the first round, to take him there, I mean, they have 2 guys that could project as Pro Bowl players joining that defense. So it just depends on the shoulder, and it depends on what his attitude is.
I remember John Lynch bringing up the shoulder issues. He said they had their doctors looking up one side and down the other. They completely believe that his shoulder is completely healed. He'll be just fine. So time will tell, and we'll see how it goes.
And my favorite story with that is when Ron Wolf wanted to trade for Brett Favre, the doctors failed the physical because he had a similar condition in his hip to what Bo Jackson had, and Ron Wolf overrode the doctors and approved the trade. And then you end up with that guy starting 297 straight games. So there have been plenty of players young in their careers that people look at issues that they have with the body, and that just turns out to be completely wrong. So we'll see. Their doctors were confident in it, and sometimes it's a feel thing as far as whether you take that gamble.
Yep. All right. And they didn't have a pick in the second round. So in the 3rd round, they went Akello Witherspoon, cornerback out of Colorado. Big guy, 6'3", 198. He's got speed and size to boot.
Yeah, but he has no consistency, which is why he was available in the 3rd round.
Right.
That's what Charles Davis had to say about him. But I don't think he's a guy that's going to help this year, but I think he's a guy that if he gets a few years to develop, he has all the size and speed and height to be an effective NFL corner. So I think for the 3rd round, that's what you're getting there is developmental prospects, and they got a good one.
Yeah, and you and I both reacted the same way when this came around. They took C.J. Beathard with the 104th pick overall, quarterback out of Iowa, who's probably thrown maybe 10 passes his entire career at Iowa.
Yeah, this is probably why I gave Cleveland the best grade in the draft rather than San Francisco, because I did not really like this pick. He, like Mike Mayock said, mostly 5th and 6th round grades from the teams he had spoke to. So I thought it was a reach, But they said that that he reminded Shanahan and Lynch of Kirk Cousins, I believe, coming out of school, and he develops into Kirk Cousins. They got a steal there, so nobody's going to care in 5 years.
They won't have to worry about trading. They won't have to worry about signing Cousins in the offseason because they've got C.J. Beathard. But I don't buy it. Again, it was a run-heavy offense in Iowa. He doesn't have the. I don't know. This pick just confused the hell out of me. I don't know.
I think they could have addressed other needs, and he probably would have been around in the 5th round.
He would have been around in the 7th round, in my opinion. But that's just me. So they could have waited on this one. All right, and anybody else stand out in this draft? They have a lot of picks.
Joe Williams stands out in this draft. I have been reading stuff on Roto World that he might actually surpass Carlos Hyde as the starting running back this year, just because they're concerned about Hyde's durability. That could be that they want to encourage Hyde to take the offseason seriously. I think sometimes coaches play motivation games with these things where sometimes you get a high rookie that comes in with a lot of hype and you say, no, he's got to earn his job. He's 4th string right now. He's got to earn his way up the ladder. This could be a situation where they're trying to send a message to Carlos Hyde, come into camp in shape, ready to stay healthy, because if you don't, we have a guy we like.
Yep. All right, so what's your grade for San Francisco?
I'll go with a 9.0. Like I said, I think I gave Cleveland a 9.5. And really, if they had not taken Bedford with that 3rd round pick, I would have probably given them the same grade I gave Cleveland. But that was the only thing that put it a little behind Cleveland for me.
The Niners should be a very, very improved team this year with what they picked up in the draft and their new front office and coaching staff.
I think so. I mean, they're going to have problems because of their quarterback situation. It is very below average. They don't have a lot of good receivers. I think they're going to be one of the bottom offenses in the league, but at least their defense won't be quite as bad as it was last year. I could see them winning 4 or 5 games. I don't think they're –
Brett, to answer your question, Jared Goff getting any better, he's got a good head coach to make him better. If he's going to get better, he's got a good coach to do it with. So who knows? He can't get much worse than what he was last year because he got banged up pretty bad last year. So we'll see what happens.
And as far as Eddie Lacy goes, I don't care if he's down to 253 pounds. He is still private pile to me.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but he got a $55,000 bonus because he was under 253. So under 253.
Because he was just a regular fat ass, not a massive fat ass. That's $55,000.
Well, you can take that money he got with his garage sale 2 weeks ago and buy some more chicken wings.
I mean, he did really well with the P90X, and I think he was down in the 240s. But the problem is, once the season started, he started gaining weight again. I mean, this is just a guy that has not shown any discipline to be able to keep his weight down the last few seasons. So he's kind of in show me mode right now. I need to see that he's going to stay at weight for a season. I hyped him up last year in a contract year with that P90X workout, figuring that he was going to be a real bargain in fantasy, and I was sadly disappointed. Yep.
All right, next up we got Seattle, the last team in our post-draft coverage. 2nd round they went Malik McDowell, defensive tackle out of Michigan State.
Probably would have been a top 12 pick, but when Michigan State's season went downhill, he was one of the players whose effort went downhill. So there was a lot of questions about his motivation to play. But he's 6'6", 295, and can rush up the middle. And he doesn't need to be the star of that defense. He just needs to be a piece. So I think they acquired a pretty good player.
Plus, playing on a potentially Super Bowl competing team is going to be motivation enough, should be for him anyway, to get to become good.
Absolutely.
The 2nd round they went Ethan Pocic. Out of LSU, the only offensive lineman they went after in this draft, which, as we talked about extensively prior to the draft, how much they needed offensive linemen, because that what they did not spend on their offensive line last year.
Don't forget about Justin Senior, the offensive tackle in the 6th round. That was the other one they took.
Sorry, I apologize. My had not scrolled down. I apologize. You're right. Okay.
But he was picked 210, and you're probably not going to find a starting lineman at pick 210. And that was the problem, is they had a lot of guys that were of that quality on the line last year, paying at only $6 million. That was one of the more confusing things, because when I rate front offices in the league, I'd have a hard time keeping Seattle out of my top 5. I think New England, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Seattle, Those are probably four of the elite front offices.
Ozzie Newsome is a front office in and of himself.
Yeah, and Denver's been pretty good over the last few years. I'd probably put them in that conversation.
And that's John Elway. That's John Elway. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some. The point is Seattle is in the conversation for being one of the top front offices. Their line was ranked 32nd by Pro Football Focus. They only paid it $6 million. That was the shock of the draft to me, is that they didn't come away with anybody that I think makes their running game better or that is going to start at the tackles and help keep Russell Wilson upright.
What about Pochico? He's 6'6", 310. He should be. I mean, he's listed as a center, but can he play guard or tackle?
He probably projects as a center. He might be able to move to guard, but I think he's going to be inside. But I think Seattle's top-graded offensive lineman last year was their center. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Right.
But that was the other thing that was confusing about it. It wasn't like it was a line where center was just a gaping, hole in the middle of the line. That was actually the strength of the line, and that's what they added in the draft. So it was a perplexing pick.
Well, Brian Brillig says that this line has not been the same since they lost Max Unger.
You cannot field a quality offensive line on $6 million.
Right. That's basically what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's just no way to do it. I mean, unless you hit 5 home runs in the 2nd to 5th round of the draft in a couple of years, and then you're going to be paying everybody, max contracts when they hit free agency. I mean, it's just not anything that's a sustainable strategy. It's perplexing that a front office this good would undervalue their offensive line that much.
Well, Seattle had 4 picks in the 3rd round. They went defense 3 and wide receiver on the 4th one. In defense, they took Shaquille Griffin, defensive back out of Central Florida, Delano Hill, strong safety out of Michigan, and Nazir Jones, defensive tackle out of North Carolina.
Yeah, the one thing I like about Seattle's situation is you already have Bobby Wagner.
Yeah.
You already have Earl Thomas. You already have Richard Sherman. You have Michael Bennett. They have the stars on their defensive line. They don't need star players in the draft. They need guys that can be part of a rotation, fill a role, and develop. And so that's the thing with all of these guys, is none of these guys are going to be asked to contribute immediately, and all of them could end up being good rotational players or develop into something special. So they definitely retooled the depth on their defense in this draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably with the team with one of the best defensive in the league, that's probably the best way to go. But again, you can't blame them too much because it wasn't really an offensive lineman deep draft anyway. There really wasn't much to choose from as far as that goes. Granted, they had a high pick in the 2nd round. They had a mid-level pick in the 2nd round. They had a high, and then the 3 picks they had in the 3rd round were all lower tier as well. So there wasn't a whole lot to choose from as far as offensive line, but still.
But on the other hand, they traded that 2nd round pick to Jacksonville, and Jacksonville used that on Cam Robinson, the tackle out of Alabama.
Right.
So I mean, if you take Cam Robinson in that spot, and maybe in the 2nd round, that Freeney that went to San Diego would have been available. All of a sudden, you got 2 offensive linemen to add to that team. So, like I said, I hate to question Seattle because their front office, you figure this is a team that's been in the divisional round of the playoffs for 5 straight years and made 2 Super Bowls. These guys know how to build a team. Right. But I was a little perplexed at what they did given how bad their line was last year.
All right. And then finally, the 3rd, they took Amara Darboh, wide receiver out of Michigan, 6'2", 214.
Yeah, a little bigger receiver. Baldwin, gets a lot of touchdowns there. Jimmy Graham gets a lot of touchdowns. I thought Lockett was going to be a sleeper last year, and Russell Wilson's injury really zapped his value, and then he got hurt at the end of the year. So they took him, and they also took David Moore out of East Central Oklahoma in the 7th round. So I think, again, they're just trying to find some depth at wide receiver because they have some question marks there.
Yeah, and the whole thing with Jimmy Graham surprised me because I didn't think that they liked to use the tight end, but they used him a lot last year, and he was very effective. So that was good for Jimmy. So anything else stick out in this other than those guys in Seattle's draft outside of that, Justin Senior, who you think won't make the team?
Well, I mean, Christopher Carson could be somebody to watch out of Oklahoma State because, I mean, their running back situation is a mess. C.J. Precise was hurt last year at times. Thomas Rawls had the big playoff game, but, he had a lot of disappointing games. Eddie Lacy, we talked about him. They got like about 10 running backs on their roster, so it's going to be interesting to see how the depth chart looks once week 1 comes for the Seattle running game.
Not to mention our favorite Christine Michael. Did he? No. Did he not sign with Seattle? I thought he signed with maybe we know. Yeah.
Did he resign there?
No, we talked about that last week, and he did not. No, I apologize. No, he did not.
No, he's an unsigned free agent. Yeah, Green Bay re-signed him, and then they cut him.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, what kind of grade do you give in Seattle?
I'll give him a 7.0. I think they got, Malik McDowell could be one of the better pass rushers from the interior in this draft, and they got a lot of other guys that are interesting pieces. But I thought they needed to upgrade the line. I thought that was goal number 1 in this draft, and they failed to do so. So I wouldn't give them a very high grade.
Yeah. All right. All right. Anything else you want to touch on? We got about 10 minutes to go. If there's anything else you want to go to.
A couple stories. I saw Jamal Charles 50-50 to make the 53-man roster in Denver. I mean, that's kind of interesting because in free agency, a lot of the times the big names are the veteran guys that we know all about. And so when you hear a guy of the caliber of Jamal Charles getting signed, you would think he's going to make an impact. So the fact they don't even think he's going to make the team, I think speaks a lot. We already talked about the Blunt deal and Brady. So, yeah, I don't think there's really a whole lot else out there. That's about it.
Devontae Freeman says he wants to be paid like an elite player.
Well, I mean, if I had a choice between one of the 2 running backs to play elite money to, I'd give it to him over Tevin Coleman, just because Tevin Coleman did not show me he could stay healthy.
Right.
Last year, Freeman has been fairly healthy there the last couple of years and been an elite running back. So if anybody deserves it, he does. He can run, he can catch, he's a good touchdown scorer. I just always question paying running backs franchise money because they have such a short shelf life. They rarely last past 30. They rarely last past 2,000 carries. And so once a guy is 4 years into the league, to give that guy monster money at a position where it's pretty easy to find replacements in the draft. I don't know if that's the best use of cap dollars, but he deserves his contract. He does. He's been very good the last couple of years.
Yep. All right, well, that'll do it for this week, Derek. Thank you very much. So what are we going to talk about? We got 2 more shows left. What are we going to talk about?
One more show.
One more show. I'm sorry. You're right. One more show. Yeah.
Yep. I don't know. I think next week is just kind of a free-for-all. We'll see if he's feeling a little better, and hopefully he can get in here next week. Right. And again, so sorry to hear that, and so just hoping and praying that he feels better as soon as possible.
All right, man. Well, that's going to do it for this week on the Sports Nerds Network. Thanks, everybody, for watching. I'll post this to my YouTube channel here in the next 10, 15 minutes or so and load up to my blog and get the link out there for the replay. So on behalf of Derek Laughlin, I am Scott, the Sports Nerds. Thank you for watching. We are out. Peace.